So today, my guest is a good friend of mine, Stefan Verstappen. He's a Canadian author, researcher, and adventurer. He has written dozens of articles for various magazines and newspapers, and is the author of 8 books, including The Way of the Warrior, The 36 Strategies of Ancient China, and The Art of Urban Survival. He has worked as an instructor for St. John Ambulance, a wilderness guide, a community organizer, and a martial arts instructor with over 35 years' experience in the martial arts, including 4 years spent studying in China. He is the creator of the viral YouTube documentary Defense Against the Psychopath and the Paradise Stolen series and 200 other videos. Today, my friend Stefan and I are going to be musing on the topic of cultivating an immortal soul. So, I'd like to welcome Stefan to the show today. Good morning, Stefan.
Good morning, Dixie. I'm sorry you got stuck in the snow. You see, I was worried about that. That's why I tell you not to go out in that kind of weather.
Well, the ice underneath made it really hard to move anywhere.
Yeah, yeah. But you had a good day, from what I've heard. So that's good.
It was a great day. It was a great day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so since your first time on the show and people may not know much about you, can you just share a little bit about yourself and then we'll get into our musings?
Oh, dear. Yeah. Well, you know me. I don't like to talk about myself too much because there's too much to talk about.
This
um,
is true. You are very deep.
yeah. No, I'm what you would call a Renaissance man. I study many sciences and disciplines and arts, and but not just read about them and study them. I try to embody them, and I try to get good at it. So, martial arts is one, but I'm also a musician and an artist recognized by the Canadian Council for the Arts here in Canada, and an inventor and scientist and astronomer. You name it. I've pretty much done a lot of it in my time. And what I'd like to talk about today is not immortality of the soul. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to correct you on that, because that is the subject for a whole different talk. There's a lot to be said about the immortality of the soul. What I'm talking about today with your listeners is how to live a long time, so longevity, and immortality or near immortality in the physical body. What first sparked my interest in researching immortality was when I was studying martial arts in China. Now, the Chinese have a fixation, an obsession with immortality and longevity. I mean, just about, half of the things they do and eat is all based on the idea that it will make them live forever. There's a famous story about the first emperor of China, known as the Yellow Emperor, or Qin Shi Huangdi, and he was obsessed with more immortality as well. And since he was emperor of China, he spared no expense in sending out doctors and scholars and philosophers throughout the country to bring him back the secret to immortality. And, well, what happened was that all these concoctions that he was taking poisoned him, killed him. Although could be very likely that he was poisoned anyways. But many of the concoctions that the ancient Chinese alchemists and doctors came up with were mercury based. So the old Yellow Emperor was drinking mercury, and yeah, you don't live too long after drinking mercury. An interesting side story to that is that someone came to the emperor and said, "Listen, I know where the magic plant of immortality is. It's in the Eastern Ocean on an island, and if you'll provide me with the ships and a colonization crew, I will go and get it for you. So the emperor provided him with ships and 1,000 men and women and all the supplies they needed, and they sailed off to the east, and they never came back. Which would be a smart idea because, of course, there was no immortality plant. And so if you came back empty-handed, it would be chop chop. And the theory is, and the legend states, however, that what they did was they landed in Japan. And they founded the earliest Japanese civilization known as the Yamato culture. And so that's how modern Japan, or that's how ancient Japan was founded, by a group of Chinese alchemists that were supposedly on the search for immortality. Anyways, it's an interesting side story. So many of the legendary founders of Chinese martial arts were alleged to have had extended lifespans. For example, the founder of Tai Chi, Chang Song-fong, allegedly lived to be like 1,200 years old. And other founders of Chinese martial arts were alleged to live to be 200, 300, 500 years. Even the founder of Kung Fu, Shaolin Kung Fu, known as Bodhidharma or Damo in Chinese, he was the one who started teaching martial arts at the famous Shaolin monastery, and he was the one that turned the monks into Shaolin Kung Fu masters. Even he was said to have survived death. There's a story about he died and he was buried. And one of the monks from the monastery was traveling to India, and it was up in the mountains when he came across a lone traveler, and that traveler told him he was Damo, and but he had only one shoe. So the Shaolin monk was stunned by this revelation that, we thought you died. And he said, no, I'm traveling to the west. I'm going back to the source of wisdom. And then he disappeared. Now, when the monk gets back to Shaolin, he tells all the other monks that he had met Damo on the road to the west, and that he was only wearing one shoe. Now, the other monks laughed at him and said, well, Damo is in the crypt. He's in the mausoleum on the property. Well, let's go and see if he's still there. So they went, and they opened up the mausoleum, and they opened up his casket, and it turned out his body wasn't there. The only thing that was in the casket was, you guessed it, one shoe. So there's a long tradition of associating martial arts training with immortality. And, when I first started martial arts, I was a young man. I didn't really care about living forever, so I didn't pay too much attention. But the older you get, the more you start to think, well, maybe it'd be good to live an extra couple of 100 years. So I started researching it. And there are some practices in Chinese Kung Fu, but not just Kung Fu, also in an associate art known as Qi Gong, which means, it's like Kung Fu, it's the same Kong. Kong means skill, and Kung Fu means skill in fighting, but Qi Gong means skill in manipulating your body's internal energy. And the practitioners of Qigong practice Qigong for the express purpose of living longer. That's the whole point of Qigong. So I started looking into it. And it's a vast subject, so what I'm going to do today is give everybody just a broad strokes of how this all kind of fits together. And towards the end of the interview, I am going to give everyone the one secret to staying young and healthy and reversing aging and overcoming all the diseases, arthritis, Alzheimer's, cancer, diabetes, heart problems. All of these things can be treated with one really easy practice that costs you nothing, and you hardly have to do a thing. But I'm going to save that one for the end, okay? So that the listeners will stay tuned in. Anyways, I began researching the, immortality, and I first turned to science. So what did the modern medical science have to say about longevity, how to live a long time, and even immortality? Now, there's been hundreds of studies done on longevity, obviously, because it's one of the most common desires of humanity is to live a long and healthy life. So what did science come up with? Well, they examined a lot of things. They examined DNA. They came out with the telomere theory that the DNA strands, after numerous replications, begin to fray. It's like a piece of rope that frays at the end. And it's because of this fraying that aging is caused or occurs. Well, that really didn't answer it. And they came up with a bunch of other ideas, hormones, and, well, that didn't work either. So, after, 60 years of scientific investigation into longevity, there's only two things that they came up with that are definitely proven, beyond a shadow of a doubt, to extend your lifespan. And those two things are, number one, exercise, and not just any kind of exercise. There's good exercise and there's bad exercise. Things like long distance running is actually not very good for you. It causes way too much stress on the body. And other exercises like, there was this fad, I don't know if it's still going on, called CrossFit, where they work you so hard that you basically pass a kidney. I mean, people have died from training too hard. Yep. So those things never worked. That kind of exercise doesn't work. So what's a good exercise? Well, any exercise that elevates your heart rate. Okay, so you need to elevate your heart rate and causes you to sweat. Any exercise that would cause you to sweat for about 15 minutes, that's healthy exercise. So a brisk walk, hiking up a hill, and remarkably and not uncoincidentally, Tai Chi. Tai Chi is a wonderful exercise. Would you do it at the right speed and using the correct postures, you will sweat and you will raise your heart rate, but it is not injurious to the body because there's no high impact reverberations like you would get from, like aerobics or long distance running. Your joints are, maintain a calmness and a dynamic tension, but they're not impacted heavily like you would with many of those other types of exercise. And so it's no coincidence or it's no surprise then that Tai Chi has been associated throughout Chinese history with a long life. And that is because it's a healthy form of exercise. So is going for a walk in the woods. So is going for a canoe ride. So is hiking. Those are all healthy forms of exercise, but Tai Chi is one of the most healthy because, again, you get all the benefits of an elevated heart rate and sweating without the injury to the body that other types of exercises will cause. And in addition to those health benefits, because of the complex and graceful movement, it trains your kinesthetic sense. In other words, it trains your ability to move smoothly and harmoniously with your body in the world. So there you go. Number one, if you want to live a long life, take Tai Chi.
Tai Chi, yes.
The second thing that science discovered that will definitely lengthen your lifespan is reduced caloric intake. Just don't eat so much. This is why people that are obese are open and susceptible to dozens and dozens of different illnesses and long-term diseases. And the best way to treat that is to lose weight. So reduced caloric intake means you eat less. So you eat just enough to maintain a healthy body weight, basically. But what they found was that the best way to reduce overall your caloric intake is through periodic fasting. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do this. Some theories claim that if you spend 8 hours between meals, that this will have the same benefits as like fasting for 3 days. So long as you don't constantly eat. So this goes in contradiction to, I know, and I've had discussions with people that, swear by the hypoglycemic diet where you snack every hour, have lots of little snacks throughout the day, and that will help you lose weight. But the periodic fasting is the opposite of that. You don't snack many times throughout the day. You have 1-2 meals a day. That's it, period. And even better is to go 24 hours between meals. Now, this is basically what I do. I eat once a day. And so that means every day I fast. The problem with the hypoglycemic diet, which is where they eat a lot of little meals, is that every time you eat, you trigger the digestive system, and that triggers the pancreas to release insulin. And what happens is, with lots of, numerous snacks and meals, and the pancreas continuously has to excrete insulin, it becomes fatigued. And then when it can no longer excrete insulin, then you have diabetes. So I think the hypoglycemic diet or the low blood sugar diet or whatever will probably worsen your type 2 diabetes and your type 1 diabetes. Again, I'm not, first of all, I'm not a doctor, but I'm just saying this is what my research came up with. So those are the two things that will definitely increase your life, increase your health. And that is eat once a day. And in addition to eating once a day, I will do a 2, 3, maybe 4-day fast once a month. So this will keep your weight down. If you really need to lose weight, if you want to lose weight fast, the best diet I've come across is you eat one meal of, say, 500 calories, and then you fast for 2 days, and then one meal of 500 calories. So basically, you're only eating once every 2 days, and it's only a small meal. And I know it sounds hard to follow that kind of regime, but truth of the matter is, and if you go without food unwillingly, for example, you run out of groceries and you're sitting around the house, there's nothing to eat, and you're, let's say you're snowed in the cabin. Well, because you are not willingly fasting, you get hungry. You think you're starving. Because it's against your will. And most people have not fasted, and so their experience of fasting is going a day without food. And they're starving. They are hungry. But it's actually just psychological, because if you willingly forego food for a day or 2 days, you don't feel hungry after the second day. If you can go 2 days without food, then you can go a week without food. So, because you don't feel hungry, and you don't feel weak or anything like that, or shaky in the knees, or empty in the stomach, make sure you drink enough of water. So the fasting is probably the best way to lose weight, because if you're obese, and if you're morbidly obese, and it's, overweight, you better lose the weight fast, because it's not just the obesity, but the cancer will get you, the heart disease will get you, the tumors. All of that is always linked to being overweight. And the best way to treat it and the best way to lose the weight, periodic fasting.
And now when you're talking about the periodic fasting, same as like intermittent fasting, basically, people probably recognize that word more. And are you talking about sorry, the extended fast? Are you talking about like a water fast, like just water, or nothing at all?
No, just water. You have to drink water.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you need the water, and the water won't, trigger the insulin production. But you need to be hydrated, especially when you're fasting. So extra water.
Yeah, and that is a big, like when talking to my Chinese medicine doctor, just going in for my own things, that whole issue you're talking about with the liver and the insulin is so prevalent these days. And people just get told by doctors that their insulin, what's the word? Oh shoot.
Fatigue?
Resistant. So they put so much insulin, their body stops doing it, and it's because of their diet. But the doctors are like, "Oh, now you're like pre-diabetic, da 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 da," And really they just like need to change their diet basically, and then flush their liver. We'll shift that again, right?
Yeah, that's what I've come up with in my research from what I've read. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So that's the same if you're fasting too. Your intestines and all your organs will relax and then they flush out, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So, okay, this is what I discovered, and I delved into the alchemy, Chinese alchemy. There's, oh man, my God, there's a whole world of weirdness in Chinese alchemy. All the potions they came up with, and God knows what's in them. Anyways, but so my next foray into longevity and immortality is work I've done with my good friend, Dr. Ronald Kapp, who's an emergency room physician stationed, or he lives in Santa Barbara, and he recently wrote a book, Passion to Live, and I helped edit the book for him, so I became very familiar with his work. Now, what Dr. Ron did was he went to reinvestigate what is called the blue zones. Now, the blue zones is based on a study several doctors made back in, I think it's like the early 90s. And what they did was they took the demographic charts and average age of different populations throughout the world. And they found there are certain places in the world where almost everybody lives to be 100. So places like Okinawa, a place in Guatemala, surprisingly, the Seventh-day Adventists in California, Cyprus in the Mediterranean. Now and there's a couple other, but anyways, there are these villages or these areas where everybody lived to be 100 years old or older. Not only did they live to be 100, they weren't sick. Here, people start getting ill by the time they're 50, right? Type 2 diabetes, heart conditions, early stages of arthritis and Alzheimer's, dementia. People start coming down with these diseases in their 50s and 60s. By the time they're 70, they're on death's door. And they're immobilized. They can't do anything because they're so ill. So the people that lived in these blue zones, and they call them blue zones because they used a blue magic marker to mark these places out on a map of the world. So the blue zones are places where people live to be 100, but they're healthy at 100. They're healthy at 105. They're healthy at 110. No Alzheimer's, no dementia, no arthritis. They take long walks every day. They work in the garden. They do their carpentry. Whatever it is they did throughout their life, they continue to do until the day they die because they're not sick. So, this was something to study. So they did numerous studies of these areas, and they examined all the different facets of their life, and such as what was the water that they were drinking? Was there something in the water that was beneficial? Maybe a lack of fluoride would help. Was it something in the wine that they drank? Because they all drank liquor, but not a lot. They'd have a glass of wine at the end of the day. So was it something in the wine? Was it something in the food? They examined everything, and there was no common denominator. There was nothing that they all did that you could say, because they drank this wine, or, because they all ate eggplant, that's why they lived to be 105. They couldn't find anything. There is one thing they found, though, and this has nothing to do really with food or medicine. The one common denominator that they all had was all these people belonged to communities. They had a rich social life of friends, family, extended family, and they got together all the time. They'd have lunch every day, and they would talk and chit-chat and play music. And so it seems, and I followed that path a little bit further because, I'm working on a book on how to create communities and the importance community has for us as human beings, but also for civilians in our society. If we're going to fight against the great evil that has overtaken our world, we can't do it as individuals. We have to do it by working together. But the benefit of working together in a community, and there's numerous studies that have proven this to be true, and that is community. You need a social network of people that you like, that you can get together with. Being online, this whole, social media online is poison. It's poison because you think you're part of a community, but unless you can talk to them face to face, look in their eyes, give them a hug, pat them on the shoulder, hold their hand, it doesn't provide the same healthy benefits. So you have to be part of a community. Anyways, that was the one commonality between all the blue zones, was that they work together.
Look at our societies now, like it's all very separate. Like even though we live in cities or towns, you know what I mean? There's closer communities in rural areas than there are in areas where they're densely populated, which is unfortunate because there's so many people around, but we've really, like you're saying, we've really been driven away from each other, right? And look at how sick everybody is and everything that's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, most people don't know the name of their next door neighbor. And this is done on purpose, if we want to just take a sidetrack here. The reason why we don't have communities is because the evil powers that be, that want to control and destroy Western civilization, has purposely created division among humans, because they know if we are divided and we are isolated and alienated, number one, we won't live a long time. And it seems to be apparent right now that the agenda is mass genocide, worldwide genocide. Whoever runs things wants us dead. And one of the things that they have been doing for quite a long time is making sure that we don't communicate with each other, that we have so many differences and everybody's got their own opinion, and if you don't agree with my opinion, then I will have nothing to do with you. I've seen families torn apart by political correctness. And I know the listeners listening, you know families, and probably your family has been torn apart by political correctness. So what do you think political correctness is about? To make sure everybody's happy and healthy? No, the opposite. It's They know that this will ruin families and communities, and that will make you sick. It will depress your immune system, and you will die young and sick. So the last 10 years of your life, any money you may have accumulated through hard work will be siphoned off into the medical industrial complex. They'll rob you blind, and then when you die, there's nothing left. Nothing for your children, nothing for your grandchildren, and that's the way they want it. They take it all. So anyways, back to the subject of the blue zones. Yeah, go ahead. Question?
I was just going to say, so this talking like what we're talking about, the longevity and mortality and building community as part of that, and the other things as well, this is the healing on a collective level, right?
Yes. It's healing on a collective level, exactly. And we need to heal on a collective level. And okay, I'm going to get serious for a second. If we are going to survive as a species, we have to heal, and we have to come together. And it's not just the physical healing, the body healing, it's also a spiritual healing. But that's the subject for a whole different show, right?
Yeah. Well, we're going to make this a series, I think.
Yeah, well, physical immortality, spiritual immortality, and the need to work on both. You need to work on the body, but you also need to work on the spirit. And the body is just a tool of the spirit. So if you improve the functioning and the health of the body, you will help to improve the functioning and the health of your spirit, your soul. They're connected. They like to tell us that they're two separate things that got nothing to do with each other. No, well, no, they're connected. They're one and the same. Your body is merely the physical extension of your spirit. Anyways, so what's the other thing that keeps you young and healthy for a long time? So we know that reduced caloric intake, periodic or sporadic or intermittent fasting. We know that exercise, but not heavy exercise. You don't have to kill yourself. Light exercise, just enough to make you sweat for 20 minutes. And those things will improve your body, your health, and your immunity. But there's one other facet, and this is going to be the secret to longevity right now. One other facet that the Qigong masters and the Kung Fu masters have constantly stated was, when you practice this, you have to do this out in nature. Nature is what will heal you. Going out into the forest, going out on the lake, going for a walk in the forest. This is the number one medicine for both your body and your spirit. Now, there's a facet of this. So I looked into this. Okay, well, my Kung Fu master in Hong Kong, Master Chan Hong Chung, who was a famous master. Oh my God, he was well known throughout China. His teacher was well known throughout China. And his teacher's teacher was like the most famous Kung Fu master in Chinese history. They've made over 100 movies about his life and TV series. Actually, Master Chan, when he was young, starred in a couple of these TV series based on the life of Wong Fei Hong, who was the famous master. And Master Chan was, in his 20s. And this series came out like the 1930s, It's black and white. But so there's a long tradition there. But Master Chan always trained outside. And I have since taken up that habit. As a matter of fact, I don't like to train indoors. I just don't like it. So when I go to practice Kung Fu, I go in the backyard. I bring a heavy bag. I hang it from the tree branch so I can do my kicks and things like that. But my favorite way to train is to train outdoors. Now, why would this extend your life? Well, it turns out recently, within the last 10, maybe 20 years, there has been, mainstream scientific research done on it. And one of the most important discoveries they have made is grounding, or they also call it earthing. Now, here's the theory of how this works. There is a theory that your body is electrical. Now, it's not a theory. We know it's electrical. But even more electrical than we think. If you want to do a deep dive, you can go into cancer research that shows that cancer cells have a negative electric charge, a weak electric charge, and that cancer, that every cell in our body is like a microscopic battery, and you need to charge those batteries to a certain voltage. And if you don't charge those batteries to a certain voltage, they start to mutate and corrupt and die. And when they die and mutate, they become cancer. So to reverse or treat or prevent cancer, you need to make sure that the ambient voltage of each of the cells in your body is at the right charge. Okay, well, how do you do that? Well, the way you do that is through the principle that was first mentioned in the ancient Chinese texts and has, again, recently been verified through modern medical research, and that is called grounding or earthing, and that is, and again, this is the easiest thing in the world to do, folks, and that is to walk barefoot on the earth. That's all there's to it. That's all you need to do. The studies they have done show that by doing so, you significantly reduce high blood pressure, anxiety, arthritis, diabetes, and Alzheimer's. All of these things can be reversed simply by walking barefoot on the earth. So what's the principle behind this? Well, the principle is this. We understand that the body is electrical in nature. And there are theories, and I'm not going to go into it because it's too complicated even for me to go over it all. But the theory is that the individual cells in your body maintain a certain electrical charge. But if it builds up too much static electricity in your body, then this leads to all those diseases. Now, what Dr. Ron found in his study of the blue zones was that, yes, okay, community is the only common denominator. Nothing special to drink or eat or do other than a little bit of light exercise and keep your weight down. But what Dr. Ron discovered in his theory about aging is that aging is a disease. It's not a natural process. It is a disease caused by one thing, and this one thing causes all diseases, and that thing is inflammation. So inflammation causes aging, and aging causes heart disease, cancer, arthritis, Alzheimer's, you name it. All the other diseases, typical diseases that people associate with getting older, these are not the result of getting older. These are the results of inflammation. And the key treatment to reduce inflammation is to ground yourself. This is what the most recent medical research has discovered, that the grounding, simply walking barefoot in the grass, on the beach, discharges the excess of negative ions in the body, because the negative ions is what produces the oxidation, and the oxidation produces the inflammation, and the inflammation produces the diseases, and the inflammation produces aging. So it's all related. So if you can discharge the static electricity, well, how do you do that? You have to ground yourself in the earth. You see, the earth is a negative charged entity. The earth flies through space But space and the sun are positive charged entities. That's why we have the northern lights. That's why we have lightning. Lightning is an effect of the positive energy given off by the sun, the positive ions, given off by the sun through coronal mass ejections and solar radiation. It interacts with our atmosphere, and the charge of that positive energy discharges in the form of lightning into the earth. So, as human beings, what we need to do is the same thing. We need to discharge our static electricity into the earth, and by doing so, the levels, the charge levels within each cell of our body gets calibrated back to normal. And again, these studies show that simply by walking barefoot in the forest reduces all these diseases associated with aging. There's another thing involved in training outdoors, and certainly it's not just training. Like personally, the best thing in the world, do Tai Chi in the forest. That's the best thing you can do. You get the exercise, you get the discharge. Of course, you have to train barefooted, but you get all those benefits, and that's possibly why these Tai Chi masters were said to live so long, because they trained outdoors, they trained barefoot, and they did the Tai Chi. So you got all the benefits barefoot in the park. Dixie, that's the key to longevity. It's really simple, like I said. And this will prevent, reverse, and heal most, if not all, of your illnesses. Try it out if you don't believe me. I find it's no coincidence that in the wintertime we all get sick here in Canada, because when's the last time you went barefoot outside?
Yeah, exactly. I know that is like immediate too, right? Like, I had plenty of times where I don't feel good. I'm either in a bad mood or just, in general, I go and just step outside and put my feet right on the ground and take a breath, and the relief is just, it's instant. I instantly feel held. I instantly feel grounded, and even like it cools you, like cools your temper, your thoughts, and I tell my clients, when they're upset, go outside and put their feet on the ground and then put their hands on a tree, right? And that also grounds and connects, so you get like a double, connection there. You get like a whole loop, and it's overwhelming, really, the amount of relief. I'm always shocked at that, and people always say the same thing. Like, it just feels really good to do that. You definitely feel the healing nature of the trees and the earth.
Yes, yeah. Everybody that tries it says the same thing. They feel better. They sleep better. They don't grind their teeth at night. They don't snore anymore. They don't get colds. Their arthritis goes away. This is, like I said, one of the simplest techniques. And again, the ancient Chinese masters figured this out. But now, moving forward to modern times, modern research, and not the Rockefeller allopathic medicine. These people know nothing about grounding. They won't even look into it, because their whole purpose is to sell you expensive drugs and make sure you live a short, miserable life. But if you wanted to live a long, healthy life, grounding is definitely the way to go, and many doctors and researchers now swear by it. And people that have tried it, just like you said, Dixie, the minute you step out there, you feel the release, because now all this, we can call it negative energy, right? All this negative energy is, and it's a physical, electronic energy, immediately discharges into the earth. And so now you're back to, healthy levels of electrical ambience within your body, and this is what will heal you. Now, there's another thing that's involved in training outdoors and going for long walks. And there was a lot of research done on this subject in Japan. In Japan, they call it forest bathing. And forest bathing in Japan, and it's a very popular health technique, healing technique, is simply, guess what they do? They walk barefoot in the forest. So that's all they're doing, and they've done numerous medical studies in Japan, and again, it shows time and time again, walking barefoot through the forest, on a regular basis, again, reduces Alzheimer's, arthritis, diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, cancer, all the diseases that we all associate with getting old. All of those are cured or reversed dramatically just by going for a walk in the forest barefoot. And that's the Japanese, and they call it forest bathing. You and I, we call it grounding or earthing, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, I actually have a friend who does that in London. She takes people on walks through the forest, and basically it's like a walking meditation almost for them.
So if you want to get healthy, that's the way to go. And so the result of my vast research into immortality and longevity shows go barefoot in the park. That's it. No great mystery, no mysterious chemical, no complicated diet, and there's other things you can do. Sure, that would help a little bit, but primarily it's grounding, which is the term the Chinese use. Chinese Kung Fu masters use grounding. Earthing is the modern term Westerners use, and forest bathing is the term the Japanese use now. Just one extra thing that may contribute, and this is something Dr. Ron confirmed for me, and that is by being outdoors in the wilderness, in the forest, the pollen will repair your DNA. I know, it's way out there. I know it sounds, what? The theory is this: when we evolved, we actually evolved from plant life. And we share our DNA, much of our DNA, with most plants and trees and vegetation. So, why do you think eating fruits and vegetables is so healthy? Part of it is because we share the DNA with those substances, and what they found was that pollen, the DNA, the mRNA in pollen, has a specific function that no other substance, no other, I guess we could call it substance, has, and that is, it is genetically programmed to repair DNA, the DNA of the plant, because it's a seed. Pollen is a seed. So it repairs itself so that it can reproduce itself. Now, the theory is that when you're out in the forest and you inhale this pollen, the DNA of the pollen does its job of healing the DNA, but because it's so similar to human DNA, it will help to heal your own and repair your own DNA. Now, there's one other thing about being outdoors. That is, get your hands dirty. Because being outdoors exposes you to a lot of bacteria. It's dirty outside. But that bacteria trains and exercises your immune system. If you take somebody and you keep them in a sterile environment and never expose them to germs, they will get sick the first time they're exposed to all these germs, right? Because their immune system never had to heal itself or have to deal with this kind of infection. But if you regularly expose yourself to a little bit of dirt, put your hands in the ground. This is why gardening is so healthy for you, because you got your hands in the dirt, so you're grounding yourself through the dirt. But also the dirt on your hands is training your immune system to deal with it. So, folks, we're almost out of time, so that's what I've got left for you. If you want to live a long time, go barefoot in the forest and get your hands dirty.
Yes, amazing. Well, thank you so much. This has been really fascinating listening to you talk about immortality in our own lives here. Immortality for the mortal life. So, how can people reach you if they're looking to speak to you? And also, you do consultations and things like that. What's the best way for them to reach you?
Best way to reach me is on my website. It's www.chinastrategies, which is one word, China, and then strategies, ES, .com. And everything's on there, all my books, my articles, my videos, and things like that. So chinastrategies.com.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wealth of knowledge. And I look forward to having you back again in the near future.
Oh, you're welcome, Dixie, anytime.
Awesome.
And
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Stefan. And I'd just like to say to everybody, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday. We'll be back again next week with another conversation to muse on. And in the meantime, just remember, you can change your life. You can live the best life you want, just by making different choices, just by eating differently, just by being present in your world for yourself and for your family and friends around you, and taking time out to move your energy and do something for you to help you grow. So we will see you next week, everybody. And this interview will be posted on Anchor and Spotify later today. Have a good day and shine on, you crazy diamonds.